Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into a sequence of historical events that absolutely fundamentally reshaped our world. We're going to trace the most destructive domino effect in human history, literally a chain reaction of global conflicts that culminated in a blinding flash over Japan. You know, it's a heavy subject for sure, but understanding the precise mechanics of how this history unfolded is incredibly empowering. Let's get right into it. August 6th, 1945. I want you to paint a picture in your mind of a perfectly calm morning. It's 7:30 a.m. in Hiroshima, a bustling city of about 350,000 people. Kids are getting ready for school, breakfast are on the stove, folks are just heading out for work. Now, here's the wild part. A radar system actually triggered an alarm across the city, but the population and even the Japanese Air Force largely ignored it. They just thought it was a routine drill or a minor event. The weather was perfectly clear. High above, a single US B-29 bomber named the Enola Gay was approaching. To anyone looking up from the ground, it honestly just looked like another plane. But hidden inside that plane was a weapon the world had previously only ever imagined in science fiction, a nuclear bomb nicknamed Little Boy. At exactly 8:15 a.m., it dropped. The sheer horror of it was instantaneous. Between 70,000 and 80,000 people were vaporized in an absolute flash. I mean, the entire city was engulfed in a massive fireball. Buildings, roads, trees, all of it just turned to ash. For some people, all that remained were dark shadows permanently burned onto the surviving walls. It was a terrifying, completely unprecedented level of destruction. Okay, let's dive into this, because the destruction wasn't just physical, right? It literally shook the foundations of civilization itself. So what were the true motivations behind dropping not just one, but two nuclear weapons? Was this absolutely the only way to end a brutal war? Or, was it a calculated demonstration of absolute power on the global stage? Well, to find the answer, we can't just look at 1945. We really have to go back. Section 1. The Seeds of World War. To really understand 1945, we have to look back at a fractured, volatile Europe that was rapidly expanding its military might. It started with a spark, the 1914 assassination of Archduke Ferdinand. That sparked a massive chain reaction, dragging interconnected alliances into an all-out war. Now, America hesitated for a while, even after the sinking of the Lusitania. But by 1917, they intercepted a secret German telegram basically pushing Mexico to attack the U.S. And that was the final straw. Outraged, America entered a conflict that would ultimately claim over 10 million lives. Section 2. The Pearl Harbor Catalyst. And this brilliantly illustrates what happened next. The First World War ended, sure, but the wounds were still wide open. A defeated, completely impoverished Germany basically paved the way for Adolf Hitler. His 1939 invasion of Poland ignited World War II, which split the globe into two massive factions. On one side, you've got the Axis powers, Germany, Italy, and Japan. On the other, the Allied powers. The US was pretty reluctant to join at first, but Japan was aggressively expanding its empire across Asia, brushing right up against American interests. The tension rapidly reached a boiling point. The US supported China against Japan and hit Japan with a crippling oil embargo. Imagine causing a massive energy crisis for an entire expanding empire. To add to the pressure, in 1940, U.S. President Roosevelt relocated the American Pacific Fleet all the way from California directly to the Pearl Harbor Naval Base in Hawaii. For Japan, this wasn't just some political flex. They viewed it as an existential threat, in a looming economic collapse. They felt completely cornered. And you know what happens when an empire feels cornered? It led to a massive preemptive gamble. December 7th, 1941, 7:55 a.m. Believing that a devastating first strike would force the U.S. to lift the embargo and just back down, Japan sent an armada. Literally, they sailed 6 aircraft carriers carrying over 350 fighters, bombers, and torpedo planes across 6,400 kilometers of the Pacific Ocean just to strike the U.S. Navy at Pearl Harbor. The toll of this gamble was absolutely catastrophic. 2,403 Americans were killed in that surprise attack. The USS Arizona alone accounted for 1,177 of those deaths. 4 American battleships were sunk, 4 more heavily damaged, and over 300 aircraft were destroyed. But actually, instead of forcing America to back down, which was the plan, right? This attack became Japan's biggest miscalculation. The very next day, America declared war and jumped fully into World War II. Section 3. The Ultimate Weapon. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the sheer scale of the engineering behind it. From 1941 to 1945, exhausting and bloody battles across the Pacific pushed a winning but incredibly weary U.S. to seek a permanent, terrifying solution to force a Japanese surrender. By 1945, the rapid science of the Manhattan Project yielded three primary atomic bomb designs. You had Little Boy, powered by uranium-235, then you had Thin Man, which was a plutonium-based gun-type bomb. But get this, Thin Man was actually discarded because scientists realized it had a fatally high risk of detonating prematurely during the firing sequence. I mean, no way you risk that. So they relied on a third design instead, Fat Man, which used plutonium-239. The selection of where exactly to drop these weapons is a pretty stark reality to look back on. The U.S. military deliberately selected cities like Hiroshima and Kokura because they featured dense populations right alongside military bases. But the historical sources note another, honestly chilling strategic criteria. Scientists required largely intact cities so they could accurately observe and measure the weapon's total destructive capabilities on a populace. It was, in many ways, a grim nuclear test on humans. Let's move to and see how this builds, because history so often hinges on the smallest twists of fate. After Hiroshima was devastated on August 6th, Japan still didn't surrender. So 3 days later, on August 9th, the U.S. sent a bomber named Boxcar carrying the Fat Man bomb to its primary target, the city of Kokura. But as the plane arrived, the weather was completely obscured. Because of heavy clouds and smoke, they just couldn't clearly see the target. Due to this bad weather, Kokura was miraculously saved, and the bomber diverted to its alternate target, Nagasaki. At exactly 11:02 a.m., Fat Man was dropped on Nagasaki. 75,000 more people killed in an instant. This second devastating blow finally broke the resolve of the Japanese government. Realizing that continuing the fight meant the complete annihilation of their country, Japan officially surrendered on August 14, 1945. And just like that, the Second World War was brought to a close.
Section 4. Ashes to close alliance.
We obviously have to acknowledge the tragic aftermath left in the irradiated rubble, the deep trauma, skyrocketing cancer rates, and thousands upon thousands of orphans. So the crucial point here is the staggering historical irony that followed. In the years after the war, the very same nation that dropped the bombs, the United States, stepped in to heavily invest in Japan. They provided massive technological support, totally restructured the educational system, and spurred this incredible industrial growth. Within just 20 to 30 years, Japan transformed from a nation literally in ashes into one of the top economies on the entire globe. I want to leave you with this final thought. The bomb broke Japan, but American rebuilding helped create one of the strongest alliances in the world. It was perhaps the greatest paradox of modern history. Today, the US and Japan are the closest of allies. It really forces us to ask, what is the true cost of war, and how is it that such unimaginable destruction can eventually pave the way for such an enduring, complex peace? Take a moment to reflect on that. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning the history that shapes our world today.